the topic in its complete sense is the Gnostic philosophy of love. And that word philosophy itself is very interesting because it employs the essence of the Gnostic path completely, because it's a compound word of Greek origin, philos, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. And love and wisdom form the two pillars of the esoteric path, of the two pillars of the Gnostic teaching. And I'm going to reference, and because we are a Gnostic school, and it's important for us to convey that this isn't my teaching or our teaching. It is a teaching that has come from a lineage of masters, and of one that we've followed through his teachings, the Gnostic master Samael Aun Weor. And he says that in essence, there are three types of love, though as we go on, I'm going to express and show 7 types of love, but there's many derivations. And the 7 types of love come from the ancient Greek, and we'll explain those different types. But we can still consolidate those 3 types of love, as he says, as emotional love, sexual love, and conscious love. Now, Greek counterparts would be philia, is emotional love, eros is sexual love or sexual appetite, and conscious love is agape. And that's really in the complete sense of the word agape what love is, because it means love free from conditions, or unconditioned love. Because in reality, all other forms of love that have conditions aren't actually love. They point to and direct to, but by its very nature, love is a superior emotion. It's a superior state that is without condition, which means when we feel it, though the object may be related to someone we know and care about, but when we're actually feeling that superior virtue of love, there's a quality that is familiar and at the same time unique. It feels expansive. Movies and books are written about this ideal of love, where we dance through our day, dance through our life, happy, content. And in reality, that's the natural state of the soul, the human condition, the potential. And that we're not feeling that, it's usually because we're identified with some other conditioned state, or a condition of aspects of this love. So love is, or we could say, all creation, all that we're experiencing, all the supreme qualities of life, the virtues, the values, are really just different faces of love. Love is strength, and love is kind, love is strong, love is courage, love is all these elements that we associate as different qualities really are aspects of love itself. But let's begin with this ideal of philosophy in relation to love, and the need for us not to have a mechanical or a purely physical or emotional love, but to understand what is conscious love. There's a Gnostic axiom that many of you are familiar with, that love is law, but conscious love, or love is the law through which we as souls actually live by. But we need to be conscious of that love, and we need to be conscious that we are loving. And as many of you know that are here, consciousness is a core component of all of the work that we do. Consciousness is the ability by which we are aware of our thoughts, our feelings, our expressions, but rarely are we aware of our consciousness as we're perceiving these things. We usually feel ourselves identified or tied in to the thought or the feeling or the expression. And in that we forget ourselves. And in that we forget the qualities of love, which are given. They're here. Everything that we can touch, taste, experience, if it's done consciously, as the law expresses, can evoke love inside of us. Love of a beautiful sunset, love of a beautiful mountainscape, love of snow, love of a person. So when we speak of Gnostic, and as we said, this is the Gnostic Center, the Gnostic from the root word gnosis, which means to know or seek to know. It's a knowledge of direct experience, a conscious experiencing of whatever it is that we come in contact with. So the Gnostic philosophy of love brings us to this relationship. Now I'm going to show you what is called the tree of life, and don't be confused if you've never seen it before, or don't be sure if you have seen it before. It's great to take it new and different every time. So the first thing to understand is you show this tree of life. It expresses all of creation in its different multiple dimensions of creation and of the human individual. We like to say it's a stick figure of the universe and all the multiple dimensions. And our individual here, this thinker, this contemplator, this philosopher, as it was, is down here in the very bottom in this, what's called the world of Kuth, or the kingdom, which represents the physical world. And in the heart here, you have this, which is the seat of the tree. As you can see that it's connected with all the other parts of the tree, though the heart's a little bigger in this, so it kind of obscures these lines, but that represents the human soul, or the human consciousness. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is, as creation unfolds from the unknown, it emerges in three primary elements. And that's why we see in all traditions a relationship of a trinity. And there's countless ones. And I'm going to draw from the Christian, not because that is the only aim. It's just one that I'm familiar with, and I think we tend to be familiar with. We think of as expression unfolds from Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, this Trinity. But to take it away from this Christian ideals, what we'll do is...
Might slow down. There's a pretty
a lag. Okay. Yeah. Did it show though? Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Sorry, I forget that this is being bounced off a satellite and then into your homes. So we have to be patient. It's, oh, there we go. Oh, yes, I must be very slow, patient. Love is patient. So it's a good opportunity for me to realize that. But we'll take it out of the Christian terms and we'll put them to attributes. The first three attributes of creation, which we can say are wisdom, love, and power. Now, very interestingly, we're preparing ourselves to celebrate Valentine's Day. And we'll talk a little bit about Saint Valentine, or actually there's 3 famous but many, many Valentines, or Valentinus was the name. But it's interesting, the root of that is valens, and valens means strength or power. Valen. And so you see these 3 attributes: wisdom, love, and power. And they represent not only these first 3 spheres. This, if I do just use this allows a transformation to take place when we're actually loving or acting. That transformation then puts power in the center, and the 2 columns upon which the whole tree, the whole path rests, are wisdom and love, or love and wisdom, which is, as I said, philosophy. So the philosophy of love is resting on the ability to stand in, to be with, like compassionate love, which means to feel with. And these 3 unfold into a second trinity that gives birth to what is called the soul of the tree, the spirit as father, its divine consciousness as mother, which emerges this child of the human consciousness. And the first initiatic work of the Gnostic master Samael, which is called the Perfect Matrimony, the first chapter of the first great work is entitled Love. And the first lines he expresses is that God as the Father is wisdom, and God as the Mother is love. And that core unit is so fundamental to all of creation. As I've said before, it's very interesting that upon the birth of a child, instantaneously in that moment, for the first time, a trinity is formed. The child first becomes a child when it's born, which simultaneously makes a father and simultaneously a mother, which gives us the insight into the key components and what it means to have a perfect matrimony. And the word matrimony comes from mater, mother, or matter, tree, 3, and unity. So real matrimony is the union of 2 souls fused by a 3rd element, which is love. Those 2 souls represent a divine counterpart and a human counterpart, the union of 2 beings, or also the union of a creator with its creation. Now, I know in these days, these times, the idea of God kind of leaves a bad taste in people's mouth because what's been done in the name of God. But if we look at it from the point of view is that all the beauty and all the majesty that is this world, that it was created through love, then that means that being, that abstract force, complete unconditional love, loves each person, element, thing equally without condition. And the path that we speak of is a path or a religion, which means again, and lig, to unite. Religion is to reunite the creation, you, myself, or anyone, back with their source. And the beauty is that we don't have to go anywhere or do anything. And that's one of the elements that really separated the Gnostics from the early church, where the Catholic Church proposed that in order to approach the divine, to come to God, one had to do it through a mediator, that of the church. Where the Gnostic believed, through the Gnostic philosophy of love, that we had a direct access through our consciousness, through the love that we have inside of ourselves to connect with that, and did not need, though there's beauty in religion, but did not need an external mediator to make that connection. So as this tree descends creation a little further, we have what is this relationship to heart and mind. And we've probably seen this scale before with a feather weighed against the heart. But on the, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. On the tree of life, what that represents is how that divine force is expressed in each of us as thought, feeling, and action. And again, the power, just like the top of the tree, the power is the means by which we balance thought and feeling. And the path of initiation that we talk about living intensely is lived through action, because we can have ideals of love. We can have ideals of happiness. We can believe we're awake, but we need to be able to demonstrate that. And as we demonstrate it, as we verify it to ourselves and to the universe or creation as it is, we awaken certain parts of ourselves, because love is the key that unlocks the door of the heart. We've said many times that the mind is a window. It's a window into reality and a window out of reality, to see into and to see out of. But the heart is a door or a portal, and the key is love. If we can maintain a state of lovingness to the people in our life, to the things that we do, everything that we can do with love can bring us closer to happiness, closer to fulfillment. Now, things that we do with desire may lead us to gratification, but gratification never can replace that of fullness or fulfillment. Only love can do that. And if we can maintain a state of love through our actions, we have the ability of two wonderful elements. One, we can be transported from the mundane world that we live in into a much richer, joyful, content world, or we can bring that element, the being, the creator, through that portal into this world, and through that transform ourselves and the world around us. Now, another great element in relationship to this window of the mind, the door of the heart, can be used in the process of meditation, because the action of our life through our activities, our job, our interactions, our relationships can bring us this level of fulfillment. But fundamentally, in the silence, in the peace, in the practice of meditation, we have the ability to see with the mind and to feel with the heart. And if we can balance those two, like in this image, balance those two, what comes from that is comprehension. a deep understanding, which is what the philosophers had always sought. And this is more than just a thought, it takes place more than just the mind, and it's more than just a feeling, but it's a combination of the two, the ability to think with the heart and to feel with the mind, so that we can comprehend in context and create a trinity in our life, which is the means by which all creation unfolds. We create a matrimony in our relationships, a matrimony with our life, a matrimony with our thoughts and our feelings, by adding a deeper understanding to how we're expressing. So, interestingly, the ancient Greeks had more than just one word for love. And so it's very important for us to start to understand the human experience from the point of view of these different aspects. And we have one word, or we have modifiers to the word to create these other forms. But the first and most common idea when we think of love, and we hear terms like making love, or, being in love, usually what we're actually thinking or communicating is desire. Now, before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about Valentinus. And there were, as I said, several different Saint Valentines that the Valentine's Day was named after in relation to love. And some of the stories are based on Christian mystics in the second and third and fourth centuries. And one of them goes that this Saint Valentine was secretly marrying people in the name of Christ, so that, in the way that the Roman or pagan ideals were, that if you were married, you wouldn't have to enlist in the army. So, and there was a culture built upon war and conquest, and so all the youth being put on the battlefield was very important. And so this, one story goes that the Saint Valentine continued to marry people secretly so that they wouldn't have to go fight. And that's one. But you can research some of that stuff. There's a lot of different stories about Saint Valentine, but for us, the most interesting and really the first known Valentinus, or Saint Valentine, he wasn't sainted because he actually separated from the church, was this Gnostic that emerged in Alexandria in the 2nd century and was part of the original church. And the school of Valentinus paralleled with the Catholic Church, or prior to the forming of the Catholic Church, but as I said, did not seek a need for mediation. So they had exterior representations with the church and carried out many of the rites of the church. And this Valentinus was actually a candidate for Bishop of Rome very early on, and he declined to take it because he didn't want to be constricted by the church itself. So many of those in the school of Valentinus were traditional Christians, but then they had this inner esoteric part that was part of the school of Valentinus, and that there was 5 main rites or rituals or sacraments that were carried out in the school of Valentinus that illustrate very wonderfully, which we're not going to go into in depth, the esoteric path. And they outwardly represent symbols to communicate a certain stage, but then inwardly they're actually states of the soul that are conquered in relation to love. The first one is baptism, and we're all familiar with this relationship of baptism, but there's a deeper, much more esoteric meaning to baptism. And then after the baptism came the chrism, or the anointing, which is baptized by water, then baptized by oil. Then comes the redemption, where the individual was deemed saved from their own abyss, had the right to leave. And this is carried out in a great work that we do over time. These are not just one-time thing. You're done. You're baptized. You're anointed. You're redeemed. Then leads to what is known as the Eucharist, which is the ceremony of the bread and the wine. But this ceremony is much more profound than that. It tells the relationship of the light of all creation coming down into flesh and blood, which these esoterically all take place inside of the initiate themselves. And they're all contained in the fifth ritual, which is the ritual of the bridal chamber. So you see at the core of this is a holy matrimony. And that this image here, the bride being approached by the groom, or very similarly, the prince coming to awaken the sleeping beauty through love. And it's not just a kiss. We think of it as a kiss, but it's a kiss with love. And all of these elements, baptism requires love. The anointing requires love. Redemption requires love. And the Eucharist requires love. And why you can see that they're all associated with the bridal chamber, which takes us right back to this first form of love, eros. Eros is the Roman counterpart of the Greek Cupid. And we often think of Eros as this mischievous little angel that shoots arrows. And little known about Eros's arrows is that they were dual. They could strike you and make you blindly in love or blindly in hate. Because there's two forms, there's two forces of eros, a fire that ascends and a fire that descends. On the superior is the erotic sexual appetite of love, to be in love. And I don't know, let's, for a moment, I'm going to remember for myself. I've done it before, so I'm ready. You guys may not be ready, but if we can think back for a moment, if you can remember the first time you felt love for someone. And I'm thinking of in a person, not someone in your family. We have some grandchildren and they're young, getting older quickly, but very young, they start talking about crushes and having crushes. In kindergarten, they're talking about crushes and passing letters. And we have a granddaughter that she's gone through several crushes. But if you can remember back to your first crush or your first sense of your first love, as it were. For me, the first real sense of that, where I really felt moved and transformed and fixated on an individual, so much so that I suffered so much when I felt that I wasn't being noticed by that person, or that it was maybe not requited. And coming home from school and calling them on the phone and they're not there. Okay, well, you have her call me back. Okay, and then I just sit there and just wait. Anyone ever do that? You just wait for that phone call, and just the suffering of why are they not calling back? They must, oh no. She said she would call. You know, that's even worse. But what I'm after, though, to think about in this moment, to really think about that first love, there's something very pure that. For me, I can remember it completely. I did not that I didn't have desire or sexual impulses in my teenage years, but in relation to this first love, I didn't feel that. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if my case is unique. I wouldn't think so. I think those early infatuations, those crushes, those things that really just mesmerize you or draw you to, activate the force of concentration on that individual. As we say, love and concentration are so intermixed that when you're in love with someone, I can remember this too, even prior to this person, feeling like even when I was at home alone, they were there in the room with me in some way. Like I had to be a better person. I had to watch how I behaved, and I was being watched. I felt it. So there's this element of love that transforms the way we think and feel, and that it's very difficult to not be aware of that individual that we're in love with. Now, in my case, when they weren't even in the room with me, but when they were, it orients the whole way we operate and move. Now, this root eros gives way to the word erotic. And as you see here, in relation to the arrow that's shot, to err, which means to wander, like errant. We just watched a fascinating movie called The Man of La Mancha about a knight errant, or errant meaning one that wanders. He goes through the world seeking to right wrongs. But to be errant is to be astray, wandering. And that this, as the Gnostic Master Samael says, that the sexual act in itself is never negative. When we fuse it with desire, when we fuse it with the inverted fire of lust, that's when it becomes that element that eros has the ability to stimulate and activate. And it's because of this, ancient Greeks were very afraid of eros, and the gods themselves were afraid of eros, because eros had this power. And you could read all the mythologies about all the stories of the interactions of the gods, and that eros would intervene and cause them to become infatuated and to desire and to make poor decisions as a result of that. And that this relationship of sinning, where the sexual act in itself is not sinful, it's not anything to be ashamed of. What happens is the sexual act without love brings about the feeling of shame. It brings about the feeling of making a mistake. And that's where the idea of sin from the Christian tradition comes from. The word is harmatia, which means to miss the mark or to err. And so there's a wonderful relationship to this archery and trying to hit the mark, so that anything that we were to do in life to bring about a love or a greater love, if we do it out of a desire or a selfishness, in essence, we're missing the mark. And it's not that we need to feel ashamed or feel like we're being judged, but in the depths of our consciousness, we feel that. We feel the conflict of what we could have done or what we wanted to do and what we did do. And so the Gnostic idea, this is where it comes back to this balancing the idea, the thought, the mind with the heart. Because ideally, when we're going through this life, our thought, feeling, and action should be aligned. And whenever they're out of sync, whenever I do something that I don't feel or say something that I don't really believe, it creates a schism inside of ourselves. And this is where we see this relationship of Eros as a divider between love and repulsion, because it takes place inside of ourselves. Now, at the center here, I have this, it's known as Eros Phanes or Lucifer, which has a very strong relationship to this. I love this image because here he is winged and he's holding his head where he's fallen. And he's holding the crown down here and his scepter, which is broken, and he's tied. Chained. Yeah, tied is a little light. Mm-hmm. He's chained to this stone, just like Prometheus was chained to a stone. And this is a reminder of what takes place when this schism between love and desire happens. And what we find is that this Eros, this force of love, gets trapped in matter and energy. And then in this way is the fall of Lucifer, or Luz, which means light, and fair means to carry, the light carrier or light bringer that falls from the superior power. Uh-oh.
Right.
You can't see, I'm struggling with the Zoom bar.
You can't get rid of it.
Wait, maybe I can do this. Hold on, everybody. No, I can't. Anyway, oh, there we go. That's better. This fall, like a lightning bolt, into matter. Where this light, which represents Eros, the force of creation, in the earlier Greeks, it said that Eros was the first being to arrive out of the chaos that creates everything after that. That this fall of Lucifer into matter, to become trapped in matter and energy, tells the story of this relationship of Adam and Eve, where this fire of Eros gets trapped in desire in the mind, which is here, desire in the heart, and the sexual desire. And so many things in this world are done when those three are not in harmony. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, there's so much divorce. I mean, what are the numbers now? Do you know the numbers? Do you keep track of those numbers? Just keep track. For us, 100%. But that so many people enter into relationships fueled by the desire of the sexual connection without having sexual attraction, without having affinity in the heart, in the mind. When in reality, the need is to align oneself, to become friends, to become infatuated, emotionally connected, and then let the physical component communicate all of those elements. Because if that happens, then if we do this in chastity and balance, meaning through love, which is the mysteries of the bridal chamber that Valentina's talked about, which we're not going to go into tonight, but just understanding that then the miracle of love, or the magic of love, can express itself. But when we're not aligned in thought and feeling and action inside of ourselves, let alone with somebody else, then that the magic of love becomes a spell that we get cast upon and become intoxicated. And this is very important because this is why the very first miracle, and you can just Google Jesus first miracle, and you'll get a million hits. I don't know if you know, does anyone know? His first miracle was at the wedding in Cana, where he transformed or transmuted the water into wine. And there's a beautiful text. I was going to read some of these from the Gospel of Philip about the Valentinian mysteries, but it speaks about the transformation of the water of baptism so that the water is no longer poisonous and no longer brings about death, and that the baptism takes place so that the ritual of the bridal chamber has the means by which to awaken all the faculties of the human individual. But as was in this story of Genesis, the relationship of Adam and Eve and this serpent, which is the fall of that power, the fall of Lucifer, the fall of Eros into the world, and with it became all the suffering. And now what you probably, most people don't know, you've probably heard of the fall of Adam and Eve, but what you don't usually hear, but it's though right there, right from that, as a result, all human beings coming from them died. We died, and we were separated from all the capacities or all the attributes that is love, the magic of love, which is the expression of the divine, because we lost the power inside of ourselves through acting in disharmony, through following the temptation, which is a very important part of the path, temptation, to be tempted, because that's what proves or verifies the virtues or the values of our soul. As I said, we can think that we're very compassionate people. We can believe that we love humanity, but then we go outside, or sometimes we just go in the kitchen. And boom, that love is gone. We forgot it. We don't have that conscious love. And so there we fall under the order of the law, because all creation, the law of creation is love. And so the temptation is in that moment, in the kitchen, in the street, while I'm driving. I'm being tempted with this negative fire of Eros to act antithetical to what I believe in my heart. But in the times of these greatest trials, in times like right now, when the world's in a state as it is, there is no greater opportunity to cultivate and to crystallize the virtues of love than when circumstances are adverse and the potential for anger and division are so strong. This is a very important time for humanity. This is a very important time for you, for us. We're not just in a holding pattern to get through this, to go on and get back to a life. We have a wonderful opportunity to cultivate love in difficult situations. The more difficult the situation, the greater the love that can be crystallized and expressed. Liberated, because that's one of the other elements that Eros was considered a fire of liberator, a fire of liberation or a fire of enslavement. Now we're focusing on love, but the mysteries of Eros and the mysteries of the sexual magic, which is the magic is love, but how to contain and to understand how to work with that potency, just like in the difficult situations of the world or difficult situations of our life, to cultivate and crystallize love, it's so great. And the difficult temptations of the strength of desire, such a great potential to crystallize the power of the consciousness and the power of creation, to create ourselves new, to recreate ourselves, which is contained in those mysteries of baptism, anointing, redemption. To be redeemed is to reconnect ourselves from our divine to our divine nature. Now, these other forms of love, storge, is familial love. It's very wonderful for any of you that have the opportunity. I think we've all had the opportunity to have parents. We may not have the greatest relationship with our parents, or we may. But storge is a love between family members, particularly between child and parent, or parent and child. And I know in my case, it is as if I'm in love. It's a very interesting relationship, and it's very natural and normal for most people to have this attraction, not in a physical way, but an attraction of the heart towards your own children and or grandchildren. Mm-hmm. It's a magical, magical love. And as one of our teachers says, it's very important to understand that divine love is just a superior octave of human love. So that we're here working down in the muck and the mire and in the world of matter and energy to build from our human experiences a love that reaches through conditions towards an unconditional love. And one of the great elements to do that is having children. Not that everybody should have children or everybody needs to have children. And in a relationship of an eternal process of the soul coming to know itself, the souls all are given an opportunity at some point to have that experience. That's how life continues. So it's the first form of real love that we're gifted. And in some cases, it's removed from us, or we're not able to have a deep, deep love with our parents or our children. But in most cases, it's inherently placed inside. It's like a cruel joke almost that you're fused to love your children. It's biological because we're down in that matter and energy. So that's the most base relationship that all animals express in one way or another as a form of love towards their children. And so for us, for everyone, it's a great opportunity to begin to cultivate love is looking at the relationships to our family. Because though in our minds or our hearts, it might seem very difficult to love certain members, or at least, or even tolerate certain members of our family. But biologically, there is an element that if we go into it, we can come in contact with a very pure form of love, which leads to a more intimate or beautiful love is called philia love, or usually called brotherly love, but sibling love. But sibling love just doesn't sound as good as brotherly love. We could say sisterly love, but I like to say fraternal love, but that sounds a little cold. But the relationship of philia love is also the love of true friends. The idea of sincere and platonic love that Plato spoke about, and that he said in relation to Eros, that the inherent fire of that longing of Eros that begins as a sexual love. And in Gnosis, when we say sexual, we're talking about a combination of forces, a union of forces, that union and strong attraction is really to the beauty, which is the Hebrew word tiferet for the soul. The human soul is that eros can transcend towards just the love of beauty. And that the ancient philosophers really were trying to find an understanding of love through beautiful ideas, beautiful art, beautiful theories, but trying to transcend that. And in that, schools were formed. And the most ancient form of schools were esoteric orders, were fraternal orders, where individuals had this strong affinity of heart and mind. And that Jesus said that no greater love is there than to lay one's life down for their brother. To have that relationship of sacrifice, because sacrifice is a key component to awakening consciousness. We generally enter into a teaching like this with an idea of transformation, and we have to transform from the first elemental way that everybody lives their life. We probably don't think of it this way, but we spend our life sacrificing others for our needs. As we're driving, as we're working, there's a sense of me first at some level. And even sometimes when we feel like, no, we're all, like I had a grandmother that was always everybody else first. But it was at the core a value of I'm good if I'm giving to other people. So there's a selfishness in this, but it's good to be polite and to be nice and to be caring, but it needs to come from a real place inside of ourselves, a real brotherly love, a fraternal love. And so these orders, esoteric orders, were formed, just like this one that, even though this is an internet and brightly colored room, it doesn't feel esoteric, deeply esoteric, but it is profoundly esoteric. We're just scratching the surface of these relationships. But the fraternal order is bound by a secret, by a mystery that wonderfully, I know I had a brother, I have a brother, and it's fascinating, though we're completely different in ways that we express, but our brothers and sisters, there's really no one that we're as close to because our life experiences are almost the same in most cases, even though we may be different. But my brother and I can just remember, this place, this time, this school, this room, this song. We share so much just instantaneously from this brotherly connection. And it's a secret connection. It's a connection that can't be communicated or transferred in a way that anybody else could understand it. It's very special. It's a bond. And that the esoteric orders, like the school of Valentinus, was considered an esoteric school because they were all bound by a secret that could not be conveyed, that would not be conveyed. So we have these exterior forms of the baptism, the anointing, but those are symbolic representations of esoteric elements that were taking place, that they wouldn't speak about outside, that we don't speak about outside, and that we have these different chambers or levels or invitations, invitings to come into a more intimate relationship and enter more into the mysteries of love, and to form part of a fraternal brotherhood, a sisterhood, a group of individuals that have ideals. So the first thing in the public meetings that we try to inspire like minds, and then we, if those wish to go deeper, we offer the opportunity to join and make a commitment. That's where love starts to transform, to go from a lighthearted love, of which I'll just talk about this briefly, is this other type of love is called ludus, which is love mostly accompanied by dancing, by laughter. It's a love free of commitment. And it's really it's sort of a flirtatious love. And it's really much of what this holidays come to be associated with, all the little Valentines, be mine or be my Valentine, or.
And Sherry, those are the little heart candies we were talking about. They're shaped like hearts. They have the little messages on them.
They're almost like sweet chalk.
Yes, they're like sugar chalk.
It's a box of chocolates, but I think for us growing up as children, that was the playful, loving, send your Valentine. Of course, they made it so that everybody gets a Valentine. If you're going to have a Valentine, if you're going to have someone you care about, you have to make sure it's known that you care about everybody equally. When that's not real, we should consider everybody, but
maybe they were promoting agape.
They were promoting agape, but forced agape is not agape. But anyway, so this ludus is a non-committal love, which is really much of what we call love today is this. It's love free from commitment. And which is people go out seeking partners and we think, wow, we utilize eros and ludus to find someone that I think is suitable. We make some connection, or as the kids say, hook up, right? And then we think later, well, do I really like this person? Do I even know anything about this person?
Or do I just know my projections of myself onto them?
Yes. How many times have you done that, thinking, wow, that person must be wonderful inside. They must think like I do because they look like someone that I would like to be with. So of course we must have a great affinity. But the next love, which is called pragma, which is love based on commitment, security.
But without.
Well, so I wanted to communicate the relationship of being bound by a secret, by the fraternal order, which is a level of commitment. So in reality, all of these types of love in their fullest expression are very profound and deep. And on their most subtle or without real love, this pragma love becomes a love on duty, and that we think, arranged marriages, which were very popular back in the day, were pragmatic. They were based on stabilizing and expressing security, and that people would marry for security. But pragma and politics and stars would, and they still do this, but really pragma is based on a love that develops over time, and that it's based on a love of love, for instance, that you enter into a commitment to love each other. And it's written right there in most lines of the wedding ceremony, till death do us part, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer. And the real contract is, you realize you're committing to both. That is what love does. Love is an element that bonds, and it's the things that we are attracted to are the elements that complement, so that we become a matrimony, or a unity, through these three forces of love and two individuals, two beings, that it's the elements that attract us that could move towards our completion are the same elements that in time produce the temptation to separate us. And that for the love of love, or the pragmatic or pragma love, which is to have at the core the commitment of love itself, that when I feel upset or I feel like things could be better if, but remembering that there's a commitment, and that in time, adhering to that commitment through love increases love itself. And the key, the wonderful element is to continue in love. And the Gnostic mysteries of what Valentina's called the bridal chamber has within it the keys. And why the bridal chamber, it's that it is the complete culmination of the honeymoon experience, how to maintain that loving excitement in relation to commitment and security continually. It is the key to perpetual motion, because the key to perpetual motion is in the couple. It is in the cross that is in motion, the movement of the cross, which was the windmill in the movie, that was a degenerated form, the movie of the Man of La Mancha, and the story of Don Quixote, why he has to conquer that, destroy that, because the great enchanter has mesmerized everyone into believing that it's something that it's not. But the key for any couple is to find a way, as we say, if God of the Father is wisdom and as the mother is love, that how could an individual continually give of oneself to the other without ever being empty? And how could one receive and never be full? There's a mystery there, and it is the mysteries of love. It is the key or the secret of all the true esoteric orders that have ever been. And it's the innermost part and the most high hidden or cherished element of all the teachings, because at the core, as much as someone else says that love is the best religion, but in essence, love is religion. It is the element that reunites the soul with the spirit, the human with the divine, the man with the woman, the lover with the lover. Love is the element, and that love has to continue to be active, loving, because in that way, it perpetuates the magnetism that keeps these two opposites drawn towards each other. But if they come too close, they cease to be, and we lose the most prime element that's necessary for this couple to stay together, which is this other type of love, which is philatia. I want to say philaltia, but I Googled it. It's philatia. And if there's anybody Greek out there, I want to make sure I pronounce it right. But philatia is the love of self, and of which, again, there are two types. There's a healthy love of self, and then there's an unhealthy love of self. Because if one doesn't have a healthy love for oneself, a respect for oneself, an understanding of oneself, and so many people get into relationships without knowing really what they think, feel, and want, because they're focused on trying to be something for somebody else so that I can win this circumstance, so I can win the heart of another by being what I think they want, which is inherently a situation that's doomed to fail. We enter into a marriage or a union solely in that honeymoon period of pure excitement, without engaging these other types of love to try to give a real balance and really be conscious of the expression and the experience of that other person and myself with the other person. So philatia is very important, to have that self-identity, self-love. Now, in its negative form, an extreme self-love, or as the ancient Greeks called hubris, which Gnostically we refer to as pride generally. But the Greeks saw pride as a virtue. Pride was the ability to know what you are capable of and to do it, to have the courage to do it. Where hubris was to not know what you're capable of and believe you can do more. So it's interesting, not naming names, but we can think of some famous individuals probably that have an extreme self-confidence simultaneously with a very low self-esteem. And that no matter how many times they fail, they still have absolute confidence. And that leads to narcissism and the inability to feel other people as individuals or as people. That the love of oneself becomes so strong.
Cherishing,
self-cherishing, self-cherishing. So that's the negative side of this philautia, which is a self-love that consumes and has no room for anyone else. But a healthy philautia, a healthy self-love, allows us to be in a couple and not lose ourselves. So it's very important, which comes to the very last and most important form of love, which is agape, which was expressed as the love of God towards human. And in essence, we are all children of God, as it were. And as we expressed in relation to God, to children, that you don't choose one child in your heart over another, you can't. That relationship of being a child means that we are all loved equally. And we all have our own spirit, our own being, our own divine part that loves us unconditionally. Now, sometimes it's confusing in the sense that we think of, well, to have storge, or this love for a child that we may feel is unconditional, but it is not unconditional because it's based on the condition that it's my child. We can think that I love my partner unconditionally, but that's not unconditional love because it's based on the condition that it's her. Just because we love someone unconditionally does not mean that we love unconditionally. Try that. Try it towards, take your unconditional love and apply it towards a screaming child in a store, or a barking dog next door, or some other element, or even worse, someone that's saying something terrible about you or to you, or doing something that you really don't enjoy. Then we see that the conditions of our love are very much in place. But through practice and through aspiration, we can approach these an understanding and experience of unconditional love. So we'll take a quick break,
half past
6-minute break, and then we'll come back and we will do a little practice.
So stretch, breathe.
So there's two elements of all that we've spoken about, all the different types of love, but in essence, there is love that is trapped in desire, And there's love that is free. We could call that love devotion. So it's very important to devote ourselves to try to contact love. But there's a fine line between devotion and desiring. Desire can lead to aspects of satisfaction or gratification, but devotion or free love, freely loving, is what can truly lead to fulfillment. And when we really feel full, at peace and content. So let's get into a comfortable spot. And we're going to do a simple practice. It's called metta bhavana, or a practice of loving kindness. But we're going to begin with a means by which to free or liberate or use love as a form of liberation from desire, by finding, connecting with love, and then expanding it. So it's first sit comfortably, where we can make the choice to be as still as we can for the next few minutes and begin to breathe. The first means by which to bring peace to the body, to the mind, and to the heart is simply by breathing completely and relaxing. If we can relax the body completely, in some ways we relax the mind and the emotions. And in this way, elevate our state. Bringing peace to the body in some way is bringing peace to our life, to our world. Let us inhale slowly and completely. And when our lungs are full, pause and relax. Then exhale slowly and completely. Then pause, relax, inhale. Pause, relax, exhale. Pause, relax. Inhale. Pause, relax, exhale. This form of four-part breathing or rhythmic breathing can bring a certain level of peace and relaxation. At first, it feels a little forced, possibly. We're not used to pausing. But it's the pauses, the space in life that allows us to absorb. Because in this breath is life itself. And this breath is the spirit itself. In this breath is light itself. And the more relaxed we become, the lighter we feel. We have two components as we inhale and we inspire or respire or inspirit. With the inhalation, we feel the lightness. And as we exhale and relax the body, we feel the weight of the body. So in this relationship, it's the breath of the breathing, the third force that links the spirit, the life outside of us, with the body and the life inside of us. There's 3 more breaths on our own in this way. I like to think of breathing as an act of devotion, as an invocation of the divine life-giving force into us, to allow a feeling of gratitude. With every breath, there's one more opportunity of life. With every exhalation, there's one more opportunity to relax. The key is awareness, to be conscious of this, to be feeling this. And now, without strong effort, but let's try to recall a moment, maybe recently or maybe when we were a child, but a moment when we felt completely loved or we felt love. Bring to our awareness that circumstance. Be it with a child, a friend, an intimate relationship, a parent, a pet. Recall that circumstance. And be in that experience for a moment. And now, in that moment, let us move right to the feeling of love itself. Removing our attention to the circumstances, to the people, to the memories, but focusing just on the sensation, if you will, of love itself in that moment. So we move from the memory and the moment of an experience and the feeling of love and focus in on just the feeling of love as if we're plucking it from the memory, from the experience. And just feel in the heart, or in whichever way it feels most natural, that feeling of love or being loved. Don't let any thought or idea or disbelief come in. Just feel the love. And let us return back to that breathing practice. But now, the breath, the force of life that we're inhaling, let it nourish, let it contact this feeling of love. On the inhalation, as it passes through the heart, it stimulates and expands this feeling. And on the exhalation, that feeling settles into us, becomes us. On the inhalation, we feel ourselves expand, and this feeling of love radiates from our center outward. And on the exhalation, we move into the center of this feeling of love. Allow this feeling to expand beyond this body, but still feeling it at the center of our heart. We feel the love from its point and its periphery as it expands. And as it expands, imagine that it's filling this room, but you are still at the center. It surrounds you and goes through you. It expands beyond the room, but yet you still never leave the intimacy and the warmth of your own heart. But you can feel as it expands, it goes beyond the walls, it goes beyond your house. It goes beyond. And as it goes beyond, it comes in contact with other hearts, people in the streets, people in the neighboring houses, people in the other rooms. And with our imagination and this feeling of love, we can perceive as this radiates and contacts the hearts of other people. As they're touched, they're changed. They may smile or look up, but it ignites in them this sense of love as well. Let us breathe deeply and completely through the heart, where we feel the radiance, the brilliance of this divine force radiating from you, but simultaneously coming through you. In effect, we have opened this door or porthole to superior dimensions in ourselves and in this world. And we're sharing it with all those we know and love. But likewise, it's radiating out, contacting many that we don't know, and even some that we don't love. Without distinction, we pray from this point in our heart for this love to go, to contact, to communicate, to connect. And with our imagination, we can feel with our heart in the center that it is surrounding the entire planet and beyond into the atmosphere. So that if you could see this planet from space, you would see a glow of love radiating out, which is the sum total of all of the hearts, of all the emotions, of all the people, knowing or unknowing, but feeling this love, which is given freely. We have this capacity to share and feel. So it makes perfect sense to do so. It's a wonderful use of time to sit in and share this love. Now there's a simple prayer that I will say that you can repeat silently or outwardly as you feel and continue to perpetuate this joyous feeling of love. And also, at any point, if someone enters into your mind, a loved one, a coworker, a friend, imagine them specifically receiving, being touched by this love. We say, may all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be in peace.
May all beings be in peace.
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be in peace.
May all beings be in peace.
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be in peace.
May all beings be in peace.
We're going to say through our hearts the mantra Aum 3 times. Aum.